And so starting off today, talking about home inspections, every home buyer that buys a home should be getting a home inspection. I mean, pretty much simple explanation there, unless of course they're a contractor. You know, sometimes they can self-inspect, but you know, even you know, my wife and I being in the business a long time and being seasoned home buyers, knowing what to look for when we buy a home, we have BPG inspected for us. You know, you guys take a look at it to make sure that we're making a good move. But Randy Noon with Buyer Protection Group is with us today, and Randy, you know, I wanted to start off the show because again, a lot of people listening to the show, you know, obviously know that a home inspection is crucial, but there's certainly people that sometimes think they can do it themselves, or that you know, that they know, you know, that they're handy, and for the cost of a home inspection, it seems silly that someone wouldn't you know, invest the money into determining what they're dealing with.
Yeah, good morning, Andrew. That is the biggest investment of your life. So
Right.
yeah, a few $100s for a home inspection is really pennies compared to the investment that's going into it. And just in the last week, I've had 2 different situations where I saved clients over $10,000 that I heard back from the real estate agent in negotiating with the seller, because one was a giant stucco issue that they had to redo a lot of stucco on the exterior of the home, and the other was a roof that they thought was in pretty good condition. They told me when I got there, by the time I was done with the inspection, and they had a roofer out to look at it and got real numbers on it, it needed to be replaced, and they renegotiated with the seller. They said, I've saved them $10,000. So these are people who thought they were buying a good house and may have considered, well, you know, it looks good from the outside, maybe I won't have a home inspection. Look how much they saved just by a few $100 investment. So,
you know, and it's interesting because you know, on that same front, you'll have you know, people that will expect a home inspector to be able to do things they can't. You know, we've had situations pop up from time to time when a homeowner or a home buyer looks at the inspection report and expects you to do, you know, further testing, or to know certain things that, you know, your process is meant to kind of get more of a, you know, kind of from 10,000 up in the air, kind of a general overview, and get specific about certain systems and make sure there's no major issues. But at the same time, you know, we've got Brad from Tampa Bay Plumbers today, and Brad's, you know, kind of, you know, a resource for us when you guys say, hey, look, there's additional, you know, research that needs to be done on the plumbing, or whatever it is, because a lot of people go into it and they're like, well, why is my home inspector saying that he now needs to refer someone else, or can't do that part of the test?
right, and I put it in this perspective for people all the time so that they can understand. Everybody goes to the doctor, and everybody should have a family doctor, a general practitioner that they go to.
Right.
You go to that guy and you say, I have certain ailments, and he'll say, okay, well, I need to send you to see a cardiologist or an ear, nose, and throat guy. Recommend out a specialist. So we're no different. We are that general practitioner of the house. So when we look at the house, we're doing an overview, and we do what, according to our industry standards, is a visual inspection of the house. We do some testing that's superficial and to see if things are operational, but for the most part, we do recommend further evaluation when we see that there are issues with the house. They're going to need an expert in that field to come in and tell you specifically what it is, what needs to be done, and more importantly for the buyer, how much it's going to cost to be fixed.
Right,
because we don't give price estimates.
the example is, you go to the general care practitioner. I know, because I'm going through, I think I told you guys, I've had some health issues the last couple of weeks where, you know, going to a general practitioner, then going to an ENT, and going here and figuring out all the stuff that's going on, because you're going to go to the general practitioner and they're going to say, oh, you know, your blood pressure's high, or this, or they're going to notice those kind of common things that a more specialized doctor is going to get a little bit more involved and say, okay, let's run these tests. And that's kind of where Tampa Bay Plumbers comes in, because you guys do some really cool stuff. And you know, I've not had you on the show before, Brad. I've had Ryan on a couple times.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, one of the cool things I love about what you guys do is the technology. You know, sending cameras down the pot, all the things that you guys do, it's just much more advanced than a typical plumber's going to go.
It is, and you know, we kind of strive to be as technologically advanced as possible. You know, the video inspection of the sewer lines, especially in homes when a buyer is looking at purchasing a home that was built in the early to mid-70s or prior, there's a very good possibility that the pipes underneath the home are cast iron, and further inspection, a little bit deeper than what a home inspection would entail, would be video inspecting those, checking the condition, and actually seeing if further work is required to get any you know, corroded pipes or broken pipes fixed.
You know, and so on that same front, and by the way, I love 813 Plumber, the number you guys got. That's pretty awesome. Like,
Yeah.
pretty easy to remember, right? 813 Plumber.
We
If you guys
just
need a
acquired
plumber,
the number. We
Yeah.
just acquired it.
That's a
We're
great
very
number.
happy with it.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that we're actually going to be hitting pretty hard soon. We're going to get our trucks lettered out.
I've even heard your radio. You guys are starting to pursue the radio front now. You know, which is
Absolutely,
cool.
absolutely.
So and you know, George, you know, from FBC Home Loans is with us today, and I have to apologize to George because the last time I had George on the show, I butchered his last name. I had Richard Vasquez from Artisan Insurance on the same day, who's our insurance partner, and I called you George Vasquez, and I know your name. It just in the, you know, kind of, you got kind of caught in the you know, in just keeping everything flowing with the show that I just ran right over it. But George, talk about how condition and how the elements of the home inspection can come into play. I know lenders don't generally require a home inspection, but there is a check and balance with an appraisal to verify certain things with the condition, where you're going to need to sometimes involve home inspectors and contractors to get a property, you know, to get 2 thumbs up from that process to be able to go through the loan process.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. One of the things that we're gonna get is, obviously, is the appraisal. The appraiser is gonna go out to the property and do a general inspection. So it's very important that anything that he notes on that property, subject to, you know, drywall damage, mold, or something like that, gets repaired. Once we see those, at that point, you should always get another home inspector just to make sure that there's, you know, when there's smoke, there's fire.
Right.
So,
And so speaking of condition, that's one thing a lot of consumers, especially that are buying a foreclosure or a beat up home, you know, what I think sometimes consumers don't understand today is we're not just looking to qualify them to be able to purchase the property. We're looking to qualify the property, you know, in the loan process to make sure the property is stable enough and of good enough condition that that lender doesn't feel like they have a risk. If they're looking at your debt to income and everything looks tight and they're loaning you money on a house that's going to need 20 grand in repairs, that's toxic paper to them. That in their eyes, that's gonna come back as a foreclosure. They're gonna have to eat it merely because they didn't do their due diligence on the property up front to see what it may need.
sure, and when you have a foreclosure, say a property's been vacant for a couple months or a year or so, there's certain inspections that have to be done. Whether if you're on a well, you gotta test the water. If you're on a septic and the property's been vacant, you gotta test that as well. So yeah, absolutely, we have to approve the property as well. That's our collateral.
And I think, and I think so many people forget about that, you know, and you know, I think that they just believe, oh, well, I can qualify, you know, and it's more than just you being able to qualify. It's the house, you know, from an insurance perspective. We had Richard from Artisan come on, and you guys each, I'm sure, have to deal with 4-point inspections. I'm sure you got to go out all the time and deal with 4 points, and you guys do them. So I'm sure you're dealing with those obstacles all the time, because we'll have clients that'll buy a property and the 4-point isn't, you know, needs a roof or the electric's old, and they're like, but I'm okay with the condition. Look, it's not just that you're okay with the condition. You're getting the majority of the money from somebody else, and they're saying, if I give you this money, I can look at your financials, I can look at what you got in savings and know that this repair might wreck you. You know,
Yeah,
and that part of it
absolutely.
is something people don't get.
The septic inspection can be one of the most, it can be your biggest lifesaver. You know, a lot of people have a misconception where you go in and they flush toilets a few times, run some water in the sinks, and the water goes down the drain, they think everything's okay. What we do, we actually bypass the septic tank, because anyone can have their tank pumped, which gives you typically about 1,000-gallon capacity
Right.
to run water. Well, once that fills up, sure, the drain field, if it is in failure, will cause the house to back up. So they can keep buying themselves that 1,000-gallon capacity. Well, we bypass the tank and actually introduce water directly into the drain field to simulate a high usage. And it wasn't maybe a couple months ago that I saved a buyer roughly $6,500.
Because again, that failure later on turns into even a bigger issue, and then you got, you know, all kinds of problems where, you know, and I think disclosure comes into play too. I mean, we have it happen a lot where, you know, you can't really rely on what the seller tells you about the condition. I mean, if we're working with a buyer, you know, and you know, one of our agents is working with them helping them purchase, and they see a property disclosure, oh, well, the owner said that the roof was replaced 8 years ago. You want to verify that. I mean, you certainly want to trust people, and I'm not saying that the seller's, you know, intentionally deceiving anyone, but at the same time, they may have got their ears mixed up. They may have.
Definitely, I see it all the time. The time flies Yeah,
Right.
we just did that air conditioner a couple of years ago, and I look at the data plate, and it was 7 years ago.
Right.
So, a couple, 7, whatever. you
Right.
know.
It
It seems like it was
2,
7,
7,
12, 14,
12.
you know, we did it in 1952.
They come back to
you
me,
know?
really? It was 7? Yeah, I swear, that's the date on the manufacturer. Oh, okay.
And I think again, and that's the part of it where having the professional inspector, you know, look at that kind of stuff. And, you know, if you're a home buyer, and obviously you're working with a good agent, they're gonna help you with this, and if you're working with our team, we're gonna obviously help you in this path. But I think the key to it is looking at that property disclosure statement, almost using it as a bullet list to tell the inspector, hey, look, here are 3 or 4 things that you know, because the home inspector, you guys aren't naturally just going to look at the disclosure report. No one, you know, you have someone's got
ask
to
for it
provide just so you
for
can know.
information,
Yeah,
that's right.
You know,
So
but the
heads up.
buyer needs to look at that and say, hey, look, Mr. Home Inspector. Hey, look, Mr. Plumber. I noticed that they said that they had a plumbing leak in the toilet, you know, upstairs in 2007. Can you just double check and make sure that was all done right?
Yes.
Now, so there's 2 purposes for that. One is to make sure that the buyer is happy with how the repair was done, or if not, they have, you know, a lot of times they have the ability to cancel the contract based on inspection. But secondarily, it's also so that if they are happy with it, they at least know what's there, or it gives them a bullet list or a blueprint for what they have to do after they purchase the home. You know, a lot of times people will buy a home and they'll get a good enough price where they're happy with little things that might need to be done, but that process is also about giving them a framework of steps they've got to go through after they buy the property.
Oh, yeah, I've had a lot of people come back to me, well, I might see inspecting a home for them a second time several years later, and they'll say, hey, we used your home inspection report, and we went through line by line over the years, or after we purchased the home and knocked out those items. So, yeah,
Yeah.
they literally use it as a checklist.